Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello. My guest today, Sarah Johnston, has some nuggets for you. We are going to discuss shame and blame for people who have lost their spouse to suicide, how people in clergy can better show up to support the grieving, and so much more. Let's get into this conversation now. Hello, Sarah.
Hi.
Welcome to the Widowhood.
I'm so glad to be here.
Are you really glad to be here in the Widowhood conversation?
I'm not glad to be in the widowhood, but I'm glad to be in the conversation.
Okay. When you hear that, welcome to the Widowhood, what comes to mind for you?
This is not my hood. I was not meant to be here. Like, why am I here? I was supposed to have purple hair by the time I ended up here.
And let's talk about that. In a reality, in a world that everyone dies, how are you not supposed to be here in your mind?
I'm 13 years younger than my husband, you're 13 years younger than my husband. And so in just daily living, it just made sense that he would go first, but we would be really old.
Okay.
And so I was prepared for us. We would sit in the backyard and discuss, because we were empty nesters for 2 years before he died. And so we would sit in the backyard and discuss what our retirement in a few more years was going to look like. You know what I mean? And we were like, we're going to sit at the farm and rocking chairs on the porches, and he's going to drive the tractors and I'm going to bring him a beer. We were going to die old and gray out here on the farm, not like this.
And when you say not like this, what does that mean for your situation?
He died too young. He was 54.
54. Okay.
I, at the time, was 41.
And your husband's name, if you would share that with us. How did you and Jeff meet?
Funny story. So my sisters are both quite a lot older than me. I was a whoops. And and my oldest sister's husband at the time, I married his best friend, his childhood best friend.
Jeff was
my brother-in-law's childhood best friend.
Oh, wow. That made for fun times with family get-togethers and doing things. Oh,
we did all the things together. We were just a super tight family unit. Yeah. So many memories.
What memory came across your mind? What did it look like?
Just all the family gatherings that we had together. We always doing crawfish boils and, turkey fries and things like that, everything together as a big family, all the cousins together, and we don't have that anymore.
Do they still have them, or do they not exist at all?
They really don't exist at all.
Did that happen when Jeff passed, or was it something before that?
I would say pretty much when Jeff passed. Yeah. Okay. Now that I think about it, you're making me reflect on new things. I feel like I need to get my notepad out. And
Go get it.
Journal. I need to journal this. Hang on.
Okay, so you bring up a good point. Why do you journal?
I have always journaled.
Okay.
All of my life, I have written things down. And, even if it's just a quick note, side note in a book or whatever I'm writing, seriously, when I pass, my kids are going to have so many notebooks and random things to clean out. There's hundreds of them. And so it just came naturally to me. It's always been something I've done. But then with the grief, I found that it was absolutely my greatest tool and instrument.
I love that. If you connected with someone that was a new widow and she was like, all that journaling is trash, it doesn't do any good, what would you share with her?
My journaling can look as basic as that. My journaling can look as basic as these quick things. That's journaling. The fact that I wrote down Right now, I'm just like super angry and I cannot work it out. That's journaling, right? That, writing down, I'm super happy right now. And I want to have this moment that I can look back on and remember every detail of. So I'm going to write it down. But then I also I go back and look at those. That was especially important to me during my mom's dementia journey, as when I kind of earnestly started using it as a tool. I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing until, I started like working on healing, and there people are talking about, oh, it's part of the process. And I realized it is, because when I would go back and look at those, I would then write again from a different perspective. And it's interesting to read those and the number of times, the perspective, how it changes over time, each time.
I've never thought of that. Right now, I'm in the 8th year of my late husband passing.
Me too.
And every week I'm sharing journal entries from, have you seen some of those?
I have.
What do you think?
I weirdly stalk you. I mean, not like stalk you. I'm always like that person in the background that's like too scared. Like I'll comment every once in a while or like hit the like button, but like I'm always too scared to show up on anybody's feed.
Oh my gosh.
I see them all.
And I'm like, I love it.
I love it because I connect with it, because I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one that does that.
And that part right there, Sarah, is the part that is important. That when there are people grieving, isolated, and alone, when you dip your finger into this widowhood community, you will learn, I'm not the only one doing this.
Thank you. And that truly, especially early on, was a big saving grace for me. Because I mean, here, I was like 42, I didn't have any direction. And plus, when you lose someone to suicide, your support system that you were accustomed to, that big family gatherings, that disappeared.
Okay, let's talk about that. And thank you for being willing to mention that Jeff took his own life.
Oh, I will absolutely openly talk about it all day long, every day. I no longer subscribe to the shame blame. So let's go.
So let's talk about this. So you just mentioned that when someone is a widow to suicide, you feel like your widowhood journey looks different.
It is different.
Can you talk about some of those differences and what you've observed for your own experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me in particular, not only did I go from having like this great support system, my family and friends were there just all the time, and being able to, say anything and do anything, to I couldn't share. I did not feel safe sharing anything, nothing, because I was blaming myself. And also other people were blaming me too.
And what is that blame? When you said blaming yourself, what did that look like in your head or your mind or in your space?
It looked like it's looked like different things over time. Very initially, like right away, was, why wasn't I there? Why the hell wasn't I there? And then, it became, why didn't I know more? Why didn't I do more? And just eating me up. I actually literally just recorded about this yesterday. I was cleaning it up today.
Oh, so you're going to post on social media?
And I'll probably put it on YouTube. Yeah, about the regrets and the what ifs and the if onlys. But, I was ripping myself apart with those things. But other people were coming at me too. And so when you're already, or for me, when I was already, stabbing myself with these shards and blades, then other people were too, instead of saying, no, don't worry, there's nothing to be, blame, you did what you could. Everyone went, yeah, why weren't you there? Where were you? Why didn't you do more? Why didn't you know more? And, they just were asking questions I couldn't answer myself. And it edified my thoughts and feelings that this was my fault. I had failed. I, should have done more, could have done more. And now this. And so it leaves you in a lonely, dark place, like really dark and lonely. You don't feel safe.
How did you start combating that?
I first went to, I went ahead and found a suicide loss specific support group.
Oh, okay. That's really good.
That was really important. Now, I will say this about support groups. You got to find the right one.
Okay, and I I say that support groups are like a hairdresser. Just because they do it doesn't mean it's the right one. Like your hair is a beautiful color purple. You have to find the right person that's going to dye it correctly. You may go to one person, they don't know how to do the conditioning, lay the color in, the different layers. That doesn't mean you still don't want the purple hair. It's just that you don't want them to do it. So you go find somebody else. Just because you have to find your tribe. You have to find where you feel comfortable.
But it was good to find that specific group.
It was worth the search.
It was, because they too were dealing with those same things, blaming yourself and getting blamed by others. And so they understood. It made me, like we said, it made me feel not alone in that. Like,
so
okay, other people are doing that.
Groups? Can you talk about what the other group? They're not saying the name of the group. I want someone to be able to listen to this conversation and think, that's how I can identify that group didn't work for me and I should go someplace else. Can you share some things that you recognize for you that didn't work in that group that could help somebody else?
In that particular group, yes, I've written so many personal essays on this and you would die laughing. That particular group, while it did make me feel less alone, terrified me. I was maybe 2-3 months into my widowhood, and I was, brain fog and confusion and chaos. And I went to that group just looking for some answers. Like, how long is this brain fog? When am I going to be able to think again? When am I going to stop throwing up and crying all the time? And so I found this group and I went, and it was suicide specific. And we're sitting there, we're talking. And finally, one of the, I asked somebody, I just kind of leaned over and I was like, I just have really one question. When is this brain fog going to go? When am I going to be able to think? And she goes, I'm 10 years in, and it's still there. So I left. I ran. I cried. I ran and I cried, and I did not go back to another group because that was not what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear, 10 years in, it still kind of sucks, but it's only going to be really bad for that first 3 months. That was not what I heard. And I just split.
Okay. But the next group, what did that look like for you?
The next group I tried was a couple years later. I had joined, I had started working with a therapist who was like, hey, why don't you try a grief group? And that time, being several years in, I wasn't necessarily thinking find a suicide specific one kind of thing. And so I went to just a regular, I don't even know, whatever I looked up was the closest grief group to me. And I went. And when I went in, we kind of all sit down, you introduce yourself. And at the end, actually not even at the end. I mean, I barely made it to the seated, who are you? What's your story? And I was introduce myself. I'm Sarah. I lost my husband to suicide a couple years ago. And literally one of the other people goes, I really don't think that you're a good fit for this group. There are special groups for people like you.
What did you do?
For people like you. And I was like, oh. And they were like, yeah, here at the center, we have another group, specifically for people who've lost someone to suicide. And you should really go to that group. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try, but can I be at this group, just sit at this group and watch? And they were like, no, really, you can't. You should really go to that group.
They kicked you out after your intro.
Yes.
Okay. And how did you feel from that?
I went to a cigar bar and had a really good cigar and cried. I felt like I was being punished yet again, or ostracized yet again. Oh, your grief is different, so you can't even sit in here with us, with the cool kids. I was being stuck once again at the
If you were to have spoken to that leader, what would you tell them now?
I've had it happen. I've had it happen again. And this time I spoke up. It was
okay.
It was, we don't think, it was really done very kindly. We don't really think you may not be a good fit, but this time it was more because I am 8 years in, I've been a widow a while. And unfortunately out here, to me, the closest group in these small areas, all the widows here, I think the furthest one out is only 4 years in. But when she said those words to me, and girl, I went to that first meeting and my engine wasn't even cool from the drive home when I got that phone call. And she was like, I don't know that you're going to be a good fit for this group, but I'm going to talk to my higher up and see if there's another one for you. And that night just trauma and the panic hit and froze me. It was really like, oh no, not again. And I said, oh, okay, well, we'll talk tomorrow or something, and hung up. And I gave it a few days. And then I was like, no, I understand that, but I need to explain to her as a leader that there's better ways to do this. And so I called her and I just said, look, I know we got a little off track the other night. I was a little bit taken aback, and here's why. And I explained what had happened at that other group and how traumatizing that had been for me. And she said, oh my God, like that is not what I meant at all. She's like, I just meant because like you're an older widow than us, but you're younger than all. Like being in my widow age was bigger, but my physical age is like way younger. So she's like, I just meant like you probably wouldn't connect with us. Like she did. It's like, I didn't mean it that way. And I was like, I know. I said, I know that now. I've had a few days to reflect on it. I said, but that night, like you have to realize like that I'm just saying, careful how you phrase it with people.
Lead with that. Lead with that.
Yeah.
So like, if I understand, you're now on 3 grief groups you've been kicked out of. Where do we stand now?
Hi, it's me. I'm the problem.
You're still not in one at all?
No, I am. I'm actually in that one.
Oh, okay. So group 3.
I was not kicked out of it. I was not kicked out of it. She was just like she was just like looking out for me. And then when I called her and I was just like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do it. And then when I called her and explained like, look, I'm not coming to this group as a new widow. I'm coming because I've been a widow for a while. And sometimes you just need to get back to the core basics and having a connection. And I said, we live in an area where there is no one. I said, you are my only option. I know there's better options, but I'd have to drive 2 hours one way to get to them. And so I'm actually in that group. I was the problem there. My trauma response from those earlier groups was the problem there, not her, but I was just like, wait a minute.
But that is helpful for someone listening to this conversation. What I hear you saying is keep trying. And sometimes a group may not fit for you, but sometimes a group may. And you found a group that fits for you. And you do have to look at the dynamics of the group and understand where do you fit.
For sure.
Right. You're not new in your widow journey,
no.
But there is a different conversation to be had for women that are more mature than younger women.
Right.
And so those things are part of it. But I also feel as if a group with different age group provides a dynamic to everybody can learn something from everyone.
I do too. And so the online, being able to do the groups like via Zoom, honestly, COVID, while it stopped me from the group that I found and loved, I had a suicide specific loss group in the Austin area that I loved. I found one, man, we connected, and then COVID. And, over time, the Zoom thing just ended and I wasn't in the Austin area anymore. And so, but being able to do that, like, because now there's many of those groups online that you can connect with. There's a ton of choices, whether you're looking for suicide specific or something else, there's a lot of good support groups. So you have a lot to choose from. So you can be choosy. You don't have to, just take whatever.
Thank you for sharing that. So what was the turning point in you becoming aware that you were not to blame for Jeff taking his life? What was that process for you coming to terms with that? And not saying that it still doesn't creep in sometimes, but the heavy way that it did.
Small steps, again, first realizing I'm not the only one that was feeling this way. And then really just honestly doing the work, doing the journaling, really facing what the what ifs and the if onlys, and then realizing that I did the best I could. There was one day in particular, and this just happened really a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, where I really stopped beating myself up with the regrets so severely. I was having a really rough time. I was beating myself up with the regrets, the failures, the what ifs and the if onlys. And I was doing the dark work. I was like, okay, we're feeling the horrible. We're gonna do what the books and the therapists have said. And I dug into hardcore what those what ifs and if onlys would look like. And my number one biggest one where I was like, if I could just go back and change this one thing, if I had known more what was going on with the situation at hand, that I could have changed things or somehow changed the outcome, and Jeff would still be here. And when I went back and honestly looked at it with myself and said, if I could go back and know what was going on, but only go back with the tools that I had at the time, what would that outcome look like? That being the key, but with only the tools I had at the time, not all this new stuff I've gotten, because I can't take that back with me. What would that have looked like? We'd both be dead. 100%. 100%.
Thank you
and
for
that
sharing that.
that really stopped me, because then I went, but wait, Jeff knew that. Jeff knew that about me. Like, he knew that about me. And so kept me in the dark on purpose, like choosing that I should stay. Like, he made the choice. His was to go and leave me here on purpose, because he knew I would have gone with him if I knew what was going on. And when I had that reckoning, ever since then, it's been, all right, Jeff wanted me to stay, then I'm going to stay. And it's going to hurt. I'm going to fight like hell. But I got up off the floor that day. It stayed. But it really it did. It changed my perspective on things when I admitted that openly to myself and my journal. And now you.
You may, in the whole world that's listening, all 4.3 million people that could be listening. But let's go back to something you said, and thank you for being so transparent. Going back to the same situation with the tools you had then. We wrestle with, I could have done this and that, but we do that with our future brain. Mm-hmm. We generally did the best that we knew how to do with the information we had
at the time. Yeah.
I look at it like this, and people go, but I could have done this and that. If you ask me what were yesterday's winning lottery numbers, I could give those to you. Yesterday's winning lottery number. But I had to know them yesterday for it to matter.
Yeah.
And we really couldn't change what somebody else wants to do. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned about Jeff keeping you in the dark. If it's okay, a lot of times people struggle with, I was married to them. I was supposed to know all the different things. It is one of the things that people struggle with the most when their loved one has taken their life. They chose to hide that and not let you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you find that a lot in suicide loss, that they either weren't telling you about a financial situation or, some other big emotional situation going on. They keep their loved ones in the dark. I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's their way of kind of trying to protect people. I know for me, not sharing my dark feelings and thoughts is a way of protecting people, until I realized it's not protecting anyone and it's killing me.
Wow. I want to circle back to something you said about other people trying to cast blame on you for Jeff's decision. Have you ever responded to someone making those accusations towards you? And if so, how did that look?
All the time, in many different ways. It depends on where I was at my in my journey at the time.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, in the beginning, when people threw those accusations at me, I was very like, yeah, that, I wish I could have done more, like apologetic, and it would just break me down. When people say things like that to me now, I simply, bless your heart. Your opinion matters absolutely zero to me.
Ooh. For someone that is struggling with that very process of finding their voice as people are trying to cast blame on them, any recommendations or things that could help them in learning how to find their voice in that process?
It has taken so much work. You know what? The biggest help for me in all of that, in really letting go of the shame and blame that I was placing on myself and dealing with what others were placing on me, Brene Brown. One of my friends told me, who knew I was struggling at the time, was like, have you read Brene Brown? And I said, no, I haven't listened to her podcast or anything. And she said, well, you should. And so I read her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Oh, that was a big one because I suddenly realized shame and blame were what killed Jeff. He was shaming and blaming himself, and other people were throwing it at, going to possibly throw him at him in the humiliation. And that's what killed him. And so I would say you have to work through that. You have to work through becoming Teflon when it comes to shame and blame. I highly recommend Brene Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. Daring Greatly was another huge one. And speaking of Brene Brown, I have Atlas of the Heart, which the cover's off of it right now, but I have Atlas of the Heart with me at all times. Look at this, because it is like used probably every bit as much as my thesaurus in my writing. It has become like the dictionary of emotions and feelings, and truly helped me put the right words to the right feelings, if that makes sense. So you have to do that work and be able to find ways to let yourself, like, forgive yourself, especially with suicide. You have to forgive yourself, but also be able to know that not everyone is going to forgive you. People are going to still shame and blame you. But if I can let go, if I'm not blaming me anymore, then you can't blame me either. No matter what you say, once I've let go of that self-blame, anything you say to me trying to blame me just it bounces off.
You took your power back.
Yeah, took my power back. Yeah.
Wow. And that is huge. I wonder, the people that are blaming, is it really their outward way of dealing with their own grief for the person that's no longer here?
I think so. Yeah. Because think about it. It's so easy to blame someone else or something else. And we don't want to blame the dead person.
Because they're perfect now. They've been deified.
That was too blunt. Sorry,
No, that's true. It's called real talk for a reason. But we don't want to blame them. But who else is there to blame but them? They did this thing. There could have been, but let's be clear. There were outward pressures and other different things, and they didn't process them well. So there could be contributing factors and other things that were part of that. And so it could be a societary type scenario that caused the pressure to do that. But if you did not take their life, it's not something you're responsible.
No.
And let's be clear, you love Jeff and would have never wanted that to happen.
Not in a million years. Not in a million years. I would have absolutely taken that bullet instead. I would switch places with him in a heartbeat.
And taking that in consideration, it's hard for me to realize the people that have come to you and tried to blame you, to realize this was your husband.
Yeah.
You love him.
Yeah.
You're struggling enough with him no longer being here. I do not need your additional pressure of all things that I don't need. What I need is your love and support in a safe space, and know that I am hurting in a way that you really cannot fathom.
And you just are not afforded that with suicide, because everybody has so many questions. Like I'm asking myself all these questions, but other people want to know too. I don't know what, like when your husband died, were people constantly asking you, oh my gosh, what happened? Why did that happen? Was he not eating well? Like what?
The question is, and this is, you bring up a good point, and I hear this a lot. People want to go, how did they die?
Oh, I hate that question.
How did they die?
90% of the time, I do not say suicide.
What do you say?
Here's a thing with people that, and I realized I'm not the only one that does this in groups. Thank you, suicide groups, because there's such a huge stigma around suicide loss, and people will immediately judge you or attack you or your person, and not afraid to give you their opinions on it. I tend to, if I don't know the person or something, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I lost my husband. And if they ask how, I'll just say his heart gave out.
I mean, kind of a ish that's kind
because when I come out and just go, he died by suicide, people will like clutch their pearls and, and you just never know what you're going to get. So unless I'm prepared to, first, all the responses, I just go with his heart just gave out.
That is so unfair.
But a lot of people do that.
Because
we sat at a group and swapped different lines that we've given out that we.
Okay, what are they? Do share.
I can't even off the top of my head right now think of any, but just things like, oh, pressure. Like just like, what do you say? Like somebody was like, oh, he died in a car wreck. That is absolutely not anywhere near how, you know what I mean? Like whatever was going to get her out of this situation. I mean, you will say anything.
Wow. I mean, so talking about not feeling comfortable and feeling uncomfortable already, it's like your husband's no longer here. And to protect other people in the responses, you have to give them something palatable so the conversation, or they could care or be sympathetic. Then you have to give them a different version because they can't handle the truth.
And you have to literally every single person I encounter, and to this day, 8 years in, and totally comfortable with talking about suicide and all the dark stuff, I still do that. And it's not even a conscious, I will read the person and be like, yeah, maybe won't respond so well to this. So, it's kind of a read the room situation. And again, it's mostly where am I that day? If I am in a place where I am capable of handling it gracefully and respectfully, I will say it. If I am not, then his heart gave out. Otherwise, if you come back with something mean, nasty, tell me he's selfish or something like that, I might punch you.
I mean, free speech and throat punching, sometimes I've learned to go together. When you say...
I verbally slash, though, and I verbally slash in a way that will have you questioning your heritage.
I get that. When you say you're comfortable with talking about grief and all the dark things about it, what are those dark things about it?
Like having that reckoning that day. I was literally, once again, I felt like I had just failed and screwed up, and all of this was compiling. And here I was like, I'm coming to Jeff. Like I'm gonna kill myself. I can't handle this pressure anymore. And that's when that really hit. But Jeff wanted me to stay, made that conscious choice to not tell me so that I wouldn't do that. I had to find, like every time I'm in that darkness, I have to find a reason. I have to find a light. And I am not afraid to talk about that. I fight that darkness, Now I'm 8 years in, so it's not like an all the time thing, but can that grief still pop up and knock me off my feet? Yeah. I'm okay to talk about it. And I feel like honestly, being able to talk about it has helped stop it. Like when you face it, when I'm in the bottom of that darkness, every single time, what hits me the hardest is like, just when I'm like, okay, I can't do it anymore, demon of suicide comes up. And that's visually how I see it. I'm in the darkness. There's this demon of suicide in front of me, and I just want to grab out and get relief and just grab it. And then when I look up into its face and I'm like, take me, I realize you're the asshole that took my husband, and I hate you. And I fight.
And I fight. And that fight is like what?
I fight like a maniac because you took I loved most. And I want nothing more than to shred you. And that's like every time. And then the devil runs for fear, holding his balls in his hand.
All right now. What does your shirt say?
I wear purple and teal for someone I miss every single day.
Suicide prevention.
Suicide prevention.
You said earlier writing something for your YouTube. What is that about?
I kind of tried to start a YouTube, or I'm trying to start a YouTube and podcast. I'm terrible at this. And so it's called Widow, Wit, and Wisdom. And it's just a place where I talk about kind of my grief journey and trying to get through it and the healing and just kind of what it's looked like for me, where I talk about those dark, ugly things and how I've gotten through it. I'm hoping to have people on. You want to be on? You want to be on YouTube channel?
Yes, I would.
Podcast.
Yes, I would be a guest. Absolutely. We all have wisdom to share.
Because you're a veteran, right?
You and I have been whittled the same amount of time.
Yeah, and I see your Army.
Oh, yes. 21 years in the Army. So veteran, yes.
I see your Army.
Yes.
My son's a veteran.
Yes.
And I know so many people like went through the suicide awareness and prevention stuff that are, I mean, it's honestly, let's face it, it's dominantly veteran based, like, or
Mm-hmm.
the real work that's being done in suicide
Yes.
awareness and prevention is, mostly behind like veteran supported.
I would definitely say in this time, day and time, huge veteran first responders,
Yeah.
and then also a lot from medical workers being in the front line and seeing a lot of horrific things since this
Ugh.
pandemic and long hours that have driven people, unfortunately, to the end of themselves
Mhm.
and needing to know, give it 24 hours and things could look differently. Some
Exactly.
those pressures of life can be so heavy and so difficult, and get into a tailspin of thinking that there's no other way out but to remove yourself. But there, people love you and people want you to
Mhm.
be here and you add value to this world, and
Yep.
we would want you to stay.
Yep.
If you were to talk to your now, knowing what you know now, and you were to talk to Sarah the day after Jeff took himself from this world, what would you tell yourself?
The day after,
You
with
get
the
to all the
knowledge,
knowledge you have now. You get
all
to
the
talk,
knowledge I have now,
and
I
you would talk
would
to you.
honestly, the day after, I would have just held her
Mm.
and just let her cry and just let her break and just said, this is going to really suck. This is going to really suck, sister. But you are one hell of a fighter and you're going to make it. I'm not saying people won't get bruised, battered, and beaten. Yeah, I would just say, just hold on. Just hold on. One breath at a time. One breath at a time. Because in those early days, all I needed was just somebody to hold me and let me actually break. I was never allowed to break. I was never allowed to be broken. I wasn't really allowed to grieve. That's one of the things with suicide loss that people don't realize. You're not oftentimes allowed to grieve. You're told your grief is less than, that your person was selfish, so you shouldn't be sad that they died because they chose this.
Horrible.
Oh, you get told this all the time. I got told like right after the funeral, like was even at the funeral. One of the few things I remember, like a guy saying, "I'll be praying for Jeff's soul because you know he's in hell, right?" People are wonderful.
What are
So
some
you're
things
not,
people could have said to you?
could have said simply, "I am so sorry. I'm just can't believe this happened, and we love Jeff so much, and we know you're shattered. We know that this just ripped you apart because you two loved each other so much, and that's not what happened."
And that's enough.
Yeah, that's it. Just, I know how big your love was, so I know how big this hole is, and I'm going to sit here and hold you and fill up as much of that hole as I can. I know it's not enough. I'm going to do what I can.
It's
That's
not
all.
rocket science.
That's
And
all
it's
I needed, and
mm,
there was no one to give that to you. And fine, and that wasn't like exclusive to me. Here I was thinking, oh, it's just me. But again, when I went to the support groups, I found out everybody had that. We've heard stories of pastors that wouldn't do the services. I know the pastor that did Jeff's service never spoke to me. And this was a pastor of a church that we had raised our children in, and never spoke to me at the service.
how did that impact
Never
you?
reached out, never called me to check on me after. And, I called him years later. When I was in that support group that I really liked and with the therapist that I really liked, and just said, look, was it because Jeff died by suicide? Is that why you never reached out? You never called? You completely ignored me? You treated us like we didn't exist? And he was just like, I didn't even realize I did it.
How did it impact your faith?
It did not impact it impacted my religion. I lost my religion, but my faith was never dented.
What's the difference for you for faith and religion?
The pastor versus what I believe. It's for a while, it wasn't that my faith was broken. It was that my faith in the church was broken, because here I was being told, oh, he's in hell. You're never going to spend him with eternity. And I went, but the God I know and have loved all of my life never said that. That's the church saying that. And I lost all faith in the church, especially when then ignored by it, which in my mind said that they thought he was in hell and I was no longer welcome. I mean, basically.
When you need the church, when you
The
needed that
most.
church to show up the most.
The most.
So for a pastor that could be listening to this conversation, or some clergy or some member in their church, what is something that people in religion should know about supporting someone that's grieving?
Someone that's grieving or someone that's grieving a suicide loss?
Either or.
Don't come at them with judgment. Don't come at them with judgment. Don't come at them with shame and blame. If you cannot come at those people and be part of their grief process with anything but grace, love, compassion, and kindness, don't show up at all. If you're going to judge them, shame them, and blame them and make them feel worse, don't show up. They don't need anybody throwing any more dirt on that grave that they're putting themselves in. That's what I would say. Show up with a shovel, but a shovel to help dig them out, not add to the pile.
Do you realize how much you've learned over this last 8 years?
Only when I look back at the journals and stuff, because it's funny when I go back and look at the journal entries and I'm like, oh, that was cute. You had no clue, kind of like being a mom, when you're looking at your grandchildren. I have grandbabies now, and I'm like, yeah, oh, this is cute. But
I appreciate you taking time to have this conversation. Have we talked about everything you wanted to discuss, or is there anything we haven't talked about?
I don't even know what we've talked about. I am in such a panic doing all of this. My anxiety is just flying. I have no idea what I've said, what I haven't said, how I've said it. I've probably completely humiliated myself.
Well, listeners, as you listen to the podcast, please share comments to see if she completely humiliated herself. So any questions of me? I've asked you a lot of questions that you don't remember, but do you have any questions of me?
I have so many. That's why I need you to come be on my podcast, because I have questions for you from being in the military standpoint.
Okay.
Especially with the mental health care and that the VA stuff, provides. But how has your grief process been? Please tell me, because we are both 8 years in. How are you doing? Just so I can gauge how I'm doing.
So we do not compare grief. We do not compare. That is unfair. For shame.
That was one of the hardest things, wasn't it? Or I know for me, because I was I thought I was supposed to feel better by now, at year one, and then I didn't. And I started really comparing myself to other widows. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this wrong.
So you make a good point that we shouldn't compare, because it is very different.
Oh.
It is different from where we were age-wise. It was different from the circumstances of our spouse's passing. From you speaking, it has been different from the community that showed up and supported, and a lot of different things that vary in that process. I started seeing a therapist the day before I saw Mark's body for the first time. So I leaned into this in a different way. And I was 49 when Mark passed. He passed, and then I turned 50, I want to say the next year. I was 49, I turned 50 that May. Mark passed in March. So different age, a lot of different things. So I'm going to save it for your conversation on your podcast.
My heart just went into my stomach when you said that you had a 50th birthday just months later.
Yeah. And I remember nothing.
Oh, we're going to talk all about that. I
have nothing to remember to tell you what, and I have the timeline wrong. Mark, hold on. Now I got to do some math.
I have to do that too all the time. I keep forgetting how old I was when he died, but then I did 43 twice, 2 years later. So
yeah, so I am about to be 59. So I would have been going on my 51st birthday, because he passed in March, and then my birthday was after that. But there's such a scattered pieces of memory that first year.
Yeah.
It's glitch. Oh yeah, I remember that happened. Oh, glitch, that happened. The sequence of events is not as consistent as other different times in my life.
There is so much I don't remember. I was talking to somebody not that long ago about Jeff's funeral, a friend who was there, and they told me something I didn't remember that song or whatever. I didn't remember
Even though it sounds morbid, I wish I had it recorded because there was so much that I didn't remember. And I wish
know.
that I could have gone back and go, oh, that's what happened. Like, I don't remember what people said. I don't remember. And it's like, dang on it. I should have thought to ask someone to do that, but I didn't.
I know. It does. You're right. It sounds morbid. And we don't think of it at that time. I don't know about you, but my brain was just not.
Mushy.
There was nothing there. It was nothing. It was like a newborn baby.
So I will allow you to close out this conversation, and there'll be a part 2 when I'm on your podcast. And we'll let them know about that. I'll let you close out with final words.
Just for any widows out there, I mean, hang in there. I know you hate hearing this, but it does. It takes time and patience and working through the hard stuff. And I know you probably don't want to journal, but journal, even if it's just writing a quick sentence or two, whether it's a good one, whether it's just letting off steam, whatever. But definitely find the people that you feel safe and comfortable with to finally let off steam, and definitely just be the light in somebody's day. Just be kinder and compassionate and extend more grace to people anywhere you can, because you do not know what people are going through. You don't.
Thank
that
you.
Would be it. But yeah.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for being part of this conversation. I am sorry for the person that you may have lost that has driven you to this conversation, but I'm glad you found us. And I look forward to speaking with you next week. Bye.
Me too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for supporting Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. Thank you for every podcast that you have listened to. And now I'm asking you to help celebrate my birthday, because Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a registered 501c3 nonprofit established to support the bereaved. And how you can help is by donating $5. Here we are in the month of May for my birthday, 5 and 5. See what I'm doing there? And you can do that right now by texting for widowhood to 53555. You can donate $5 to help support what we're doing to support the bereaved. You're helping us help other people. That's how I want to celebrate my birthday. So right now, if you would text for widowhood to 53555, and then you can donate and help what we're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then, visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.